Okay, all right. So I will carry on, and you can put anything on the chat if that's okay. So thank you and welcome both of you. So I just want to give a brief introduction to myself. My name is Bhakti Devi, and I am a trained civil and environmental engineer. Worked in the water conservation and sustainable water management sector for 30 years. 25 out of the 30 years were spent in Australia. And Australia is a very dry country. It's one of the driest continents on the earth. So they always have water issues. So there's a lot of proactive water management that they do. And I was working, I have worked with, I've helped communities, cities, municipalities, water companies to become water sustainable. That has been all my experience. Although I started off as a process design engineer, and then I started moving into more sustainable water management and more strategic roles. Having worked there for 25 years, and I've done many programs which help save companies and communities water, and there's an approach that I have learned over there, and I wanted to come and apply it here to the buildings in India. So that was the mission. I decided to, go on, and I resigned my job and moved here in 2017. I was coming and going. Then 2018, I quit my job in Australia and moved here. So my whole mission was that from the work I did in Australia, what I learned is there's lots of possibilities for individual properties to actually become water efficient and water self-sufficient. And I saw that in many projects. So I just felt that, that is something nobody actually talks about. We are kind of tied up to this centralized large system, which is always falling short, never meeting the full demand. And of course, because they are also, crumbling under the old infrastructure, a lot of financial problems. But then it doesn't stop individual property owners to make themselves water secure. Why? Because it is technically feasible and financially affordable now to actually retrofit your properties. And so I just felt that the challenge, what is not happening, and the reason it's not everyone is doing it is because people are not really aware. And even after awareness, you need to give them a helping hand. You can't expect just by telling people that you need to do this, you need to do this, because people don't act like that. People don't act just on awareness. So I took the challenge that I want to create that a program which not only makes them aware, but actually moves them slowly to action. And because once they take action, they can make a lot of difference. They will take the pressure off the current stretched out system. And slowly, as properties do this, that's how in the future we can expect the water crisis to reverse. Because the current system is dying simply because it's a linear system. It just takes water, uses and dumps it. So it can never be sustainable. So with that idea, it was a concept because I had tasted a lot of success, of course, in Australian context, but I knew that over here you have to do it from scratch. So from 2018, I started studying all the buildings in Bangalore. I also started talking to a lot of water, residents and the associations of the managing committee who make decisions to really understand how are these buildings, what kind of, they often have multiple sources. How is the configuration of the infrastructure? How are they? How is the mindset of people? How do they make decisions? So all that research was very useful for me to really understand how things are working here. Because whatever solution I develop has to actually work. Like it has to fit. You can't just do whatever I did in Australia. You can't just do that. So, so in that process, I actually slowly, as I learned how they behave, because the whole problem is about changing the behavior of the normal people. And normal people are not fully aware of water, not because they don't want to know, but because the system has made all of us equally illiterate. So there's nothing like, someone knows more than everyone is illiterate equally. And also the system has made us water unaccountable. We don't even know how much, right? So that it's very much like money. If you don't know how much, if you don't know where it's coming, where it's going, you will end up bankrupt. So it's exactly like that. So if you want to bring everything to order, especially help water users to become secure just within their own property, then you have to, so I've created a diagnostic process basically. You have to take them, give them tools which will help them understand. And also I wanted to do it like a business. I can't do charity because what happens is when you take a mission and you do it like a charity and you ask people for funds and grants, then when the grant is there, mission is there. When the grant is not there, your mission dies, and all you're ending up doing is just chasing grants and you lose the mission. So very consciously I chose that I want to design a service which actually people will be willing to pay for. We're not, it's going to be made affordable, but it has to be paid for simply because it is going to help them. So why should, someone else help because it's your future you're securing? So it makes sense for you to invest in it. So with that confidence and that faith that, I want to develop something of value which people will be willing to pay, I developed this diagnostic process. And I tested it on many, many buildings. So I spent almost 18 months refining that diagnostic process. Why do we need a diagnostic process? Because often people ask, so aren't you implementing? Yes, we implement. Implementation is very, very simple. It doesn't take anything to implement. But what is most difficult is for people to arrive at the right solution to implement. Because, or, they may do it just because some compliance is telling you to do, and they do a wrong implementation. So unless we want to make people aware that, it's your own water you are managing for your purpose. So how do they know? Not by preaching. You have to develop a very scientific process, which you take them through, and it's very much like a fitness program. So if you want people to take action, to become fit, you have to first tell them how unfit they are. Because if you don't know how unfit you are, you have no understanding why should I even do anything? Why should I exercise? Why should I have my right diet? You also need to know where you need to get to. Both these things are very important as a start. And in terms of water, we don't have that. And that's why there's no action, even though solutions are there. I spoke to so many solution providers. We have so many beautiful technologies available right in India. I've spoken to the vendors and they say they spend 1 year, 2 years just talking to selling the stuff doesn't sell because there's no trust, right? And they don't understand that there's a problem. So what we decided to do is we become the people who actually help people give that fitness test, diagnostic, help you understand where you are, that raises the awareness a bit more, and then we help you to know exactly what solution your building needs. Because whatever the other buildings are doing, you don't have to copy that because it may not work. You have to customize and also make sure that you have solution that actually is relevant to your building. And also you need to understand how much you're going to get out of it. So that all comes from the diagnostic process. So from 2020, then we started charging for that service, because when we were testing it, we were doing it for free because we were kind of testing the process. Then from 2020, we started charging and we started getting paying customers. And of course, Corona happened and that's kind of put things on the hold. But the good thing is we started getting traction. And what we feel is that we have a process now which we can teach people to learn the diagnostic process, and they can apply it in the buildings in their cities. So that way, because right from the beginning, the aim was to scale it. You need to scale the program. You can't just do it in Bangalore, and just one person doing is not going to make the impact. So what we have done is we have turned it into a training program, which is a very hands-on practical program, which will teach you how to go into a building, what data we should collect and how we should collect it. And then using the data, what do we do, what analysis we do in order to help them come up with a scorecard. We call it a scorecard, very clear scorecard which we can explain to the residents, and the solution plan which they need to retrofit to make their buildings water efficient and water self-sufficient. So with that, so that's what we cover in the training. So what I want to do is that before I talk in the details of the training, I would like to show you one report, which is kind of the example of a service we provided to one building in Bangalore. So once you see what we did for that building, you will get a clear idea that this is what you would start doing, you would be able to do after the training. And then we'll talk about the training. Is that okay? So that's, and before I launch into the training, the presentation of that report, I do want to take a pause here and check with Mr. Shivraman. You may reply on the chat to say if you have any questions or comment. And I also want to take the opportunity to welcome Vanita. Is that right? Can you?
Yeah.
Great. So Vanita, briefly, if you want to tell us which city you're dialing from, what are you currently doing, and what's your interest in this, in attending this webinar?
Okay. Good evening. Sorry for joining late.
No problem.
I'm Dr. Vanita, and I'm working in waste management sector, waste water treatment for past 25 years.
Wow.
So I was linked with you on the LinkedIn. I was following your few videos.
Right.
And I was doing audits also. So I just wanted to know, because I was not doing anything for the fresh water. We are doing audits for ETPs.
Yes.
So I wanted to understand how you are helping to the buildings.
Great. So
That
you're currently
is
working, or
interest.
you're on your own, or what's your work situation? Are you working, or are you?
Yeah, I was working as an R&D head, but now I am having my own startup similar to you.
What is it called?
So what I have done is, my startup is Davey Environment. So we have developed I am focusing onto the bioremediation. Some of the consortia and nutrients which I am supplying to the ETPs and That's what I'm doing.
Great.
So as such, we both are trying to mitigate the water scarcity in India. So our goals are almost same.
Very true.
But the way is little different. So I wanted to talk to you and understand how we can go ahead. That's what.
Great. So you only missed the part that, I just was giving the context of my own, and because you've been following my posts, you kind of know my background, I'm guessing. So, that's why I don't have to repeat that. So what I said is, because in the training, we're going to train people on a process which we have developed. It's like we have developed by doing a lot of research, a diagnostic process which you can take to the building. And, the ultimate objective of the diagnostic is to help them understand their current water security and conservation status, and show them where the gaps are, and then therefore help them understand what solutions are relevant to them, how much it costs, and that then helps them to take action, because they are now getting fully aware about why we need to invest. Okay, so I will start with the thing. So I'm Mr. Shivraman. Any question or comment, if you can write in the chat. And Mr. Munish, any question or comment before we move forward?
No, we can proceed, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. So, okay, guys, thank you so much, Mr. Shivraman. Let me move to the, sorry, please bear with me. So I'm just going to go straight to the report. So this is a building, simple 12 flat building, apartment building. They approached us because, and they are in South Bangalore. They approached us because they are supplied by the centralized water supply, which is in Bangalore. It's called Kaveri Water. So they get water supply, but it is not. It's not a regular supply. They only get it like twice or thrice a week. And this is very common where, where the city supply is falling short to meet the demand, because the population has grown way too much, way beyond what they planned for. Then they're not able to supply water to everyone. So what they do is they actually cut the supply and then supply to all, but partial. So, it's like everyone is covered, but they're not supplied fully. And that's what prompts them to dig wells in their own premise, because in order to supplement the limited water supply that they get. And so in their case, they had got 2 wells, but one of them had dried up and the other one yield was reducing. And they started to worry and they approached us to ask, we don't know what to do. And they also said they had a rainwater harvesting system. So this is the situation when we started. So just to, before I move to the building, I just want to kind of repeat a little bit, but a structured way, that our mission therefore is to provide an affordable service to apartment building, but also now we have added, because the same diagnostic process, we are able to apply to commercial building and also like institutional campuses. So we also do that because the same process can be used there. And so the purpose of that whole thing is to help them transform from being water stressed to becoming generators of usable water that they can use, and therefore they'll never run dry, because you kind of close the loop. And only when you close the loop, you can be sustainable. Otherwise, you'll always run out of the water that you're extracting. The second thing we do is we offer training to raise awareness, to become more sensitized to accounting for water, etc. And of course, now this consultancy training, which is more like creating waterpreneurs after the training. And our approach always is we want to achieve 50 to 100% reduction in dependency on external and unsustainable sources. So external and unsustainable sources includes, tanker water. It includes bore wells, because that is not a sustainable supply if you're just extracting. Even the city's water supply is part of the unsustainable water source, simply because it is a linear system and therefore it is not going to last forever. It has an expiry date. So we want people to reduce the dependency on such sources and become more sustainable by creating small circular systems. And we try and focus on changing behavior, because we believe that technology is not a challenge. Financial affordability is not a challenge, because they all are becoming more and more cheaper as the years go by. So it is not really technology. Finance is no longer a challenge. The challenge is people's mindset to move from, the age-old dependency we have had as water users of all cities, all around the world, in fact, that, we always have depended on this one agency. And the design of the system is such that, we don't really need to know anything about water except open the tap and use it. And that has rendered us very handicapped almost. It doesn't, you cannot even think about water. If something happens, we don't have the capacity to think, because we don't even know how it works. So all that leads to a very behavior that really becomes, detrimental to our own good. So we want to change that behavior, not in a preaching way, not, like giving lectures, but we want to create, we are creating tools that will help them to realize it themselves. So we facilitate discussions through our service, we paid service. We create those tools in a way that it makes them think, and then they are able to make a decision for themselves that, yes, based on this data that you have presented, and based on this insight you presented about our building, and it makes sense, and therefore we want to act. So that's how change will happen. It's a slow and painful process, but someone has to do it, and we have chosen to do that. So that's what it is, and we create a lot of tools for that. We are also, when we suggest solutions to the buildings, we are vendor neutral. We don't push a certain proprietary product. So that is the key 3 things that we, part of our approach. So the 4 services, levels of services we offer is that one is a basic service, we call it, where we help them give the scorecard, which gives them the current status. Then the next, once that is given to them, they are obviously interested in knowing, so what should we do to, improve our scores, basically. So that, and that leads us to give them a water conservation integrated plan for their building, customized to their building. That is the intermediate level of service. Then the advanced level of service is once they've seen the costing and what solutions are applicable to them, how much savings they'll get, what is the payback period, etc. Now they are in a position that they can say, okay, out of these 3, 4, 5 things you have suggested, we would like to actually start working on this number 1 and 2. And can you either they say that, can you help us implement, as in provide us project management support, or they may say, can you not just implement it for us? So we are prepared to do both, depending on what they want, and we do implement if they want that to be the case. And we have developed enough solution providers network alliance with us, so we know which who to access, because we know the quality service who are providing. So even when we do the implementation, we actually subcontracted to those vendors who are doing a good job. And when we are project managers, the building contracts directly to the vendors, and we are simply working on behalf of the client as a project manager and supervising the work that they're doing. So that's the approach of the advanced service. And the recurring services, where we want to update their scorecard as they implement stuff, and also to keep the water awareness session. We give them regular water awareness session for the community, so that it's always in front of their mind and they're not slipping back into some old behaviors. Or we also keep checking that whatever they put in place is actually working, because many times it can fail to work, and you never know because you are not even knowing or monitoring anything. So we take on that monitoring and reporting role. So that's a recurring service. And all of these have a charge, and I'll explain to you how the charges are, when I'm talking about the training. So coming to the building now, it's a 4-storied building in South Bangalore. It has 12 flats. And of course, we have also done very large complexes. I'm just picking a very simple building. And then we looked at the water sources. We look at, we get data on the borewell. We also look at all their water infrastructure, pumps, pipes, and storage tanks, etc. So in order to make sense of, how exactly water is happening in that building. Because as you know, most of us, whichever building we may be sitting, or we may be living for many years even, we don't really know how is the water working here. We have some idea, but it doesn't give us the full picture enough to know how good is my building with respect to sustainability. Between the best and the worst, where do I sit? And that's the problem, that, because we don't even know how all the pieces of water puzzle within the building work, we can't understand, and it's impossible to know also. So that's why we do data collection at various levels, sorry about that. So and then we study, take all that data, and we analyze it, and then we start to share information that is very simple and relevant for them to understand. Because we are not interested in giving them like a big long analysis, like you would make a heavy tech report. No, it's just simply the insights coming out of the data analysis which are relevant, and the objective is to give complete water picture to the client, so they actually understand how sustainable I am, and why is it I'm not sustainable or sustainable enough. So we want them to understand both, not just the result, but how come they are where they are. That also we help them understand. So first, for example, one of the insights we develop out of the analysis we do is, because see, even though they have 2 sources of water, only one of them they get a water bill. So only that part they know how much water they are using, or how much they are being supplied by that source. But the other source, which is a bore well, there's no bill, it's their own well. They just pump it, that's all they do. They have no idea how much they're using. And so we help them we collect enough data for us to know and analyze. So we found that this building was actually using a little over 50% using borewell. So which also helps them to understand, wow, so that means how vulnerable we are. If the borewell dries, actually it's going to be trouble, because 50% our water supply would be gone. And then we also do a data collection with respect to their indoor water use, in order to help us understand, how, where the end users are actually, how much is being spent of all the consumption that happens inside. So we have a very good idea about the breakdown by the end users, because whenever we are coming up with an improvement plan, we need to know which end use we could target. For that reason, it's important to have. But right at this stage, for the scorecard purpose, we don't talk about solutions. We focus entirely on the status of the water security and conservation. So we, create the summary of this water consumption, and then, we also do outdoor breakdown of the water use by indoor and outdoor, and then we also try and find out what is happening to their rainwater. Because as I said, this whole diagnostic doesn't look at only one thing, it looks at all types of water. And for us, our philosophy is that We want water users all to think about all waters as water. It is not like sewage is like something they thrown away. Every water is a resource. It may be looking different, it may feel different, but ultimately they are all water, and water can be easily recovered from that. And that's important to understand for the purpose of creating a sustainable, self-sufficient system. So what we do the analysis on the rainfall and the catchment area within the building. So that allows us to know how much of the total rainfall actually is going to discharge. So we were able to see that actually when we inspected the rainwater harvesting, it wasn't really configured correctly. Because of the wrong configuration, they hadn't been actually capturing any rainwater, and most of the water was just running off. So that's something they couldn't have figured unless someone like us came and inspected and gave them that information. So that's the rainfall story. And now after doing all that basic analysis, we are ready to kind of give them the scorecard. So as I said, the scorecard is actually made up of 4 quantifiable indicators, starting with a water efficiency score. So water efficiency score is telling the residents, how well are they using the water they already have. So that is very important because often, not just, we as water users, as well as organizations, whenever you have a water shortage, you only look at how can I improve my supply. You never ever look at, am I really spending? It seems like a big spend. Maybe I'm not spending efficiently, and there's scope to reduce my demand. Because, when you reduce the demand, the shortfall also reduces. So if you want to manage the shortfall, why only look at the supply side by increasing the supply? Why not also look at decreasing the demand if there is scope to decrease? So this is something which most of us never comes into our normal thinking. It is all about, my borewell ran dry, so let me order some tanker water. And I'm not even looking at, it's like money again. Like if you have a water money shortage, yes, you can borrow money. Yes, you can go and have another job. But, that's okay. You can do that. But wouldn't you also like to look at your expense and see where is it that you can actually cut down if there's room for cutting down? So that's very similar approach. So we start with efficiency score because that's the fundamental thing anybody can do. And it's like water saved is water earned basically. So why go for a new supply when you can actually capture the saving that you already are not doing? So we use a scale. So the parameter we use is liters per person per day for the entire building. And for example, for this building, we got it as 300. And that we measure against the scale that we have created. And it's a transparent scale, and also it is based on some practical idea that we have in terms of what is possible, how efficient people can be. If they fitted all the right things, how low can they get without compromising on the quality? And that's what informed us in creating this red, yellow, green band. So according to this scale, they actually fall in the red because their liters per person per day is 300. So can you imagine 300 versus 150 is the efficient zone. So they have almost 15% water inefficiency. And here they are like, 50% is actually borewell. So it turns out actually the water that they're getting supplied by Kaveri is quite well good enough if they did things right. But they have been drilling borewell and kind of depleting the well without looking at the demand side solution. So that is one score, and we showed them that they are in the red, and we explained why they are in the red as well. Then the second score we do is the groundwater neutrality score, which is about how sustainable is their practice of extracting groundwater. Because in order for the groundwater extraction practice to be sustainable, you also need to put back the water that you are taking over time, or at least some of it, if not all of it. And in this, of course, it's in this building, they didn't have any recharge structure, nor did they have enough open area, landscape or soft surface for the rainfall to go in naturally even. Because we take account of natural recharge, any artificial or managed recharge they might have done. So that there was nothing of that sort. So their score in this was also red. Then the third score we give is the self-sufficiency score. So the self-sufficiency score is all about, what we do is we actually assess the potential of the building to know how much potential there is on the site to make their own water. It could be any type of water, but to make water from various sources that they have inside the building. And once we have understood that potential, look, this is gone, my power is gone, so it will get cut off, and let's log out and log back in, because when the generator comes back, there's a little bit of a lag. So can we just log out now and log back in so that we are not kind of getting cut off in the middle?